Hi everyone, and welcome to English for You. I'm Pat.
And hi everyone, I'm Nikki.
So, we're recording this in March. We record these episodes a little bit earlier than normal. So in March, obviously COVID-19 was big news. How are you dealing with it?
And I avoid going to crowded places.
Okay.
I wear masks and I wash my hands a lot.
Right.
Yeah, what about you?
Basically the same. Masks in public, washing hands. I try and avoid super big places, but I'm not going like too sort of like crazy, especially about buying stuff. I really want to not get into the like, oh, I must buy all the toilet paper and noodles, because that doesn't help anyone. Now, one thing a lot of people did think about during the COVID-19 crisis was about other terrible diseases that have affected the world.
Today, we have many ways of dealing with diseases, but in the past, people weren't so lucky.
In today's article, we're going to read about something people did in the past when a terrible disease came to Europe. Let's check it out.
Reading.
Plague doctors, heroes of a dark age. The Black Death wiped out a third of Europe's population in the mid-1300s. Cities were so desperate to stop the illness that they hired anyone they could find to become plague doctors. These were not good doctors, and their job was mainly to count the dead and separate the sick from the healthy. Other forms of plague occurred throughout Europe for centuries afterward. During this time, plague doctors came up with a special suit to protect themselves from infection. They wore leather overcoats and masks with beak-shaped noses. Inside the beak were a variety of herbs, as plagues were thought to be caused by bad-smelling air. The fresh herbs were mistakenly believed to protect doctors from the illness. Plague doctors also invented their own treatments, which were often painful and made their patients worse. By the late 1800s, it was discovered that plagues were caused by bacteria and carried by rats. Effective treatments and cures were found soon after. Their medical practices were terrible, and their suits were ineffective. Regardless, plague doctors are remembered as heroes for their bravery in the face of a terrible disease.
The article begins by saying the Black Death wiped out a third of Europe's population in the mid-1300s. To wipe out means to kill, so you can see how bad this was.
Wipe out, wow. But what was the Black Death and how did it get this name?
Well, it was actually a type of disease called the bubonic plague, that's the science name, and it got this name because people got lumps on their bodies, and when they caught this disease, these lumps grew and then they went black before the people died.
So people got pieces of things on their body?
Kind of, black lumps growing up.
This sounds absolutely awful.
Yes.
So next, the article says, cities were so desperate to stop the illness that they hired anyone they could find to become plague doctors.
Yeah, sounds like about now. So there we said the cities, the people living in them, the rulers, they were desperate. The word desperate means feeling absolutely hopeless. When you're desperate, you will try anything to help you, probably because you've tried a bunch of other things and they haven't worked. We can describe somebody as desperate if they have no money, no food, nowhere to stay, and other things like that. For example, we could say Max was desperate for a job as he hadn't had any paid work for 9 months.
Desperate 是非常想要的. To want something, usually when someone's desperate, they're willing to do anything to reach their need. 例句说到 Max 超级无敌想要一个工作，因为他已经9个月没有薪水了。Alright, so the cities hire plague doctors.
That's right, and the word plague, which I mentioned a little bit before about the Black Death, can mean one of, I think, about 3 diseases caused by a very nasty kind of bacteria. It's a super deadly disease. We can also use the word plague to mean anything bad that's sort of everywhere. So we could talk about a plague of cockroaches in a house. You'd have loads. Or a plague of bad luck. Bad things keep happening to you.
Plague 在文章中指的是瘟疫，但我们也常常会用 plague 来说一种长时间的困扰 ，something that has been annoying for a long time.
Yeah, you could say, and you can use it as a verb. You could say, it's plaguing me. I can't get this thing away. So who and what were plague doctors? The article says, these were not good doctors, and their job was mainly to count the dead and separate the sick from the healthy.
But this wasn't the only time that plague doctors appeared. The article says that other forms of plague occurred throughout Europe for centuries afterward.
That's right. The word afterward is an adverb, and it just means at a later a later time or future time. In the UK, by the way, you'll hear people say afterwards with an S at the end, but it means the same thing. Now, a note about this, we don't put any nouns after the word afterwards. The time context is always given in the sentence, so you don't say afterwards the party, we went somewhere else. We use, you'd say after instead, after the party, we went somewhere else. Now in our sentence, we're using afterward to show that plague doctors were used for many years after they first appeared. Here's an example sentence. John and Chris first met in college, and they were friends for years afterward.
Afterward 这里是副词后来之后的意思，我们也可以说 afterwards with an s。有加 s 是英式和美式的差别，要注意在 afterward 后面不可以再加名词。例句说到 John 跟 Chris 最一开始在大学认识，后来他们成了多年好友。I have a question, Pat.
Okay.
If plague doctors existed for a long time ago, and they weren't exactly like doctors,
no.
Why do we still remember them?
Well, one reason is to do with the clothes they wore.
Clothes?
Yeah, it's the way they looked. The article says, during this time, plague doctors came up with a special suit to protect themselves from infection.
Ooh.
The word infection is when a person catches a disease caused by bacteria, viruses, or something like that. A person can get an infection in any body part. So a cut could get infected. You have an infection in your finger. Your lungs could get infected by COVID-19. So we'd say you have a lung infection, and so on.
Infection 这里是指名词感染，那 infected 是形容词受感染的，通常是因为细菌或是病毒所造成的。So if you have a cut or a wound, there are chances that you get infected.
That's right.
So the special suit, what did it look like?
Well, the article says they wore leather overcoats and masks with beak-shaped noses. So they kind of look like giant weird birds walking around. So we said they wore overcoats. An overcoat is a long, warm coat that goes over other clothes. It might even go over another coat. Overcoats are often used for protection, either against the cold or against something else that might cause you harm. For example, we could say it was really cold outside, so Rex put on an overcoat over his hoodie before he went out.
Overcoat 是指长的外套、大衣，就是我们在冬天或是很冷的时候会穿的。例句说到，外面实在太冷了，所以 Rex 在出门前，在他的帽 T 外面再穿了一件大衣。And as well as the coats, those doctors had masks with beak-shaped noses.
That's right. A beak is what a bird has. It's the kind of hard nose and mouth, often pointed at the front of a bird's face. A beak-shaped nose means a nose shaped like a bird's beak.
Beak 是鸟的嘴巴，鸟喙，但是我们不会用 mouth 来说鸟的嘴巴。There was a reason for this shape. The article says, inside the beak were a variety of herbs. And as plagues were thought to be caused by bad smelling air.
That's right. They thought, oh, the air is what's making us sick. We can wear this thing to sort of block it.
Yeah.
In fact, that wasn't true, as we'll see later. But let's look at the phrase a variety of. This means many kinds of something, not just one kind or two kinds, but a lot of different kinds.
A variety of 在这里是说各式各样的，很多种的。And in this case, we're talking about a variety of herbs.
That's right. A herb, and you can also say herb, is a plant or part of a plant, such as the seeds, leaves, or flowers, that's used in either cooking or making perfumes or making medicine. So think of things like basil, oregano, parsley, willow bark. They are herbs. Now, a quick note on pronunciation. People from the UK will pronounce the H, and we will say herb. People from the US don't really pronounce the H, they will say herb. Okay, so if you know somebody saying herb, they're probably British. Herb, they're probably from the States.
Herb 草药不是指一般那种在地上那种 grass 哦，是我们煮饭啊或者是中药会用到的那种有效果或是功能的草药。So the herbs block the bad smell in air?
Yeah, and so it does at least one job, which is making the air smell nice, which I'm sure was quite good for them in those times. But as people thought that the bad air was causing the plague, they felt safe. They thought, oh, okay, as long as I don't smell this bad air, I won't get sick.
But as the article says, the fresh herbs were mistakenly believed to protect doctors from the illness.
That's it. And the key word there is mistakenly. Mistakenly is an adverb. You can tell that by the ly. And it's used to show that somebody has made a mistake. Here, the adverb is modifying the word believe. So we're saying that it's a belief that is wrong. People believed something that wasn't true.
Mistakenly 是副词，错误地 by mistake。我们会用副词来形容动词，那在这里呢是形容这个 belief， 也就是说人们误以为是这样，但其实不是。
And this isn't the only thing that plague doctors believed. We see in the article that plague doctors also invented their own treatments, so medicines, cures, that kind of thing. They invented their own treatments, which were often painful and made their patients worse.
Their own treatments?
Yeah.
Doesn't sound good.
No, it's like, hey, here, lick this frog, it'll work.
Yeah, it's going to make you feel so much better.
Exactly, that sort of stuff.
The next part of the article says, by the late 80s,
or 1800s.
1800s, it was discovered that plagues were caused by bacteria and carried by rats.
Exactly. So the plague was caused by a bacteria, or a bacterium, in fact, because bacteria is the plural of the word bacterium. Not many people use bacterium these days. It's kind of a science, more of a science word. We mostly just say bacteria. That's the easy way to do it. Bacteria are very small living things. They are found almost everywhere. Most are just tiny little things trying to live, but some cause diseases when they live and grow inside humans or other animals. Bacteria are responsible for medical problems like stomach bugs, plague, all sorts of other things. However, we'll see from this example sentence that they're not all bad. We have helpful bacteria in our stomachs that help us to turn food into other things.
Bacteria 细菌的复数，在这边比较特别的一点是说，它的单数是 bacterium. We can also use germs to indicate this very small organism that causes diseases.
Yeah, germs is not a too scientific term, and I guess germ would also involve viruses. We could say viruses are germs, bacteria are germs, fungi that cause things. This is a subject I studied at university. I could talk about it for a long time, but let's stick with the article and what we've been talking about.
So we also learned about plagues that effective treatments and cures were found soon after.
Yeah, that's it. They started to figure out, okay, ways we can deal with the plague that don't involve nice-smelling herbs, licking a toad,
or
praying or something like that doesn't really work that well. Because a cure if this is a noun, is something that cures a disease, an illness, or some other problem in your body. Cures can be something simple, like a painkiller, which you take to cure your headache. And there's a way we can use this word as a verb. A cure could also be a more complicated treatment that you might need to take for years in order to cure your problem completely. So as I say, we can use cure as a verb. It's the action of getting rid of a disease or a problem. Now here is a piece of good medical news. We haven't seen much good medical news recently,
yeah, that's right.
but here is something that that did happen that was good. Doctors have found a cure for HIV, which has been used successfully twice.
Cure 在这里是名词解药。We can say that there's still no cure for cancer. 目前还没有治愈癌症的解药。同时 cure 也可以是动词，说是治好。Okay, so let's get back to the idea of a plague doctors.
That's right. Let's get back to talking about these plague doctors. We see in the article, it's getting into the conclusion, we say that their medical practices were terrible and their suits were ineffective. In other words, they didn't work.
Not at all. The article also says, regardless, plague doctors are remembered as heroes for their bravery in the face of terrible disease.
Yeah, they didn't stay at home or hide. They went out and they're like, okay, we have to move these dead people. We're going to risk getting the plague. We're going to try and keep the dead away from the living or the sick away from the healthy to try and make things work. And that did actually have some small use. Now, we saw in that last sentence the word regardless. The word regardless means despite the circumstances or facts that we know about or have just mentioned. We're presenting a contrast with something we've just said. Now, we use regardless when we want to say we're going to ignore something, or we're going to say it doesn't really matter based on what we're going to say next.
Regardless 是副词，不管怎样。所以当我们在说 regardless 的时候，就是说我们要忽略某个事情了，或是跟我们接下来要讲的东西没有关系。Regardless 后面也可以接 of 再加一个名词。For example, the job is open to all regardless of previous experience. 这个工作开放给所有的人，不管之前工作经验是怎么样。
Yeah. So basically, the plague doctors were a sort of a thing of their times. And it's because of their really cool and very spooky costume. Look at the picture in our magazine. Look it up online. You will see how you might think, "Whoa, that would be a very scary Halloween costume to go and wear to somebody."
Doesn't look like a doctor at all.
You don't look like a doctor. As I said, you look like some kind of giant evil bird of death. So yeah, a pretty sweet costume. But that is the end of our article. So now let's go to our For You chat question. Okay, so the question is quite an interesting one, given that, as I said in our introduction, we're in March, right in the middle of things. Do you think a disease like the plague could happen again, or do you think we have enough medical knowledge to stop strange new diseases? Well, how do we answer that in the time of COVID-19?
It's already happened.
It's already happened. Yeah, I guess we don't have enough medical knowledge to stop
anything.
them.
But I think now we can actually do something about it.
Right. Yeah, we talked earlier and we said the Black Death killed like a third of the population of Europe, maybe as many as 200 million people. Hopefully, fingers crossed, COVID-19 is not going to kill that many people. Right now, I think it's about 9,000.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it doesn't get too much worse. But as you see, these diseases, they come out of nowhere, and usually before the world can get ready for them, they've kind of already spread and done a lot. And we're never really going to be able to stop that unless...
Or be prepared.
Or be really prepared, because these things kind of come out of nowhere, and they're a new form of disease, so we don't kind of go, oh, this is new, we haven't got a cure, we haven't got a vaccine, we need to study it for a while to learn. You know, it took Europe years to figure out, oh, stop the rats and the fleas, that's how we'll stop the plague. So we are able to respond more quickly, but we're probably never going to be in a situation where we can completely, like, magically stop anything. The best we can do is reduce its effect so it's not as bad as it would have been if something like this happened a few hundred years ago. Okay, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks for watching us. Hope you guys stay safe and stay healthy. For English for You, I'm Pat.
I'm Nikki.
Talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.
Plague doctors, heroes of a dark age. The Black Death wiped out a third of Europe's population in the mid-1300s. Cities were so desperate to stop the illness that they hired anyone they could find to become plague doctors. These were not good doctors, and their job was mainly to count the dead and separate the sick from the healthy. Other forms of plague occurred throughout Europe for centuries afterward. During this time, plague doctors came up with a special suit to protect themselves from infection. They wore leather overcoats and masks with beak-shaped noses. Inside the beak were a variety of herbs, as plagues were thought to be caused by bad-smelling air. The fresh herbs were mistakenly believed to protect doctors from the illness. Plague doctors also invented their own treatments, which were often painful and made their patients worse. By the late 1800s, it was discovered that plagues were caused by bacteria and carried by rats. Effective treatments and cures were found soon after. Their medical practices were terrible, and their suits were ineffective. Regardless, plague doctors are remembered as heroes for their bravery in the face of a terrible disease.
Vocabulary Review.
Desperate. With his boat sinking in the lake, Carl was desperate for somebody to find him and offer help. Afterward. We went to a movie, and afterward we sat in a coffee shop and talked for a while. Overcoat. Troy put on his long overcoat before he left for work on a rainy morning. Bacteria. Make sure you keep meat in the fridge because the low temperature prevents the bacteria from growing. Cure. Plague used to kill many people until a cure was found for this terrible disease. Regardless. It's going to rain during the whole vacation. Regardless, I'll try to have a good time.
智慧小补帖
Plague. Infection. Beak. Herb. Herb. Mistakenly.
以上节目是由活用空中美语制作，活用空中美语杂志，请洽询全国各大书店。如欲索取试听教材，请来电02-2364-4000 02-2364-4000，或上网查询，网址是 www.english4u.net www.english4u.net